when I was growing up, I felt the biggest compliment somebody could give me after a show was, "Wow, you sound just like your father.
Wow.
You sound," and then for me, after a while, I stopped taking that as a huge compliment in the sense that, okay, if I'm sounding just like him, then I'm not doing anything new, or I'm not bringing in my own voice.
Brand identity.
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Lalith Dhanush Show. Today I have with me a very special guest. He's also known as the new king of the Indian classical violin by Times of India. He's performed over thousands of stages across the globe and is the winner of some of the most prestigious awards in Indian classical music. He's also the co-founder of SaPa, which is his music academy, along with his sister, Ambi Subramaniam. Watch this entire episode to understand what it truly takes to build a strong career in Indian classical music and also be the son of a legendary violinist, Dr. L. Subramaniam. Hello Ambi, welcome to my show. First of all, I'm super thrilled to say that you're one of the first people in music who plays the violin as an expert who I have on my show. I'm super fascinated and I'm eager to know more about your story.
Thanks so much for having me here. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So Ambi, for everybody who's watching, can you quickly tell me in one line what do you do?
So I am a violinist, educator, and composer.
Okay. So as a violinist, did you start this journey at some point of time during your college, or when was the start like?
So I actually learned from my father, Dr. L. Subramaniam, and I started learning when I was 3.
Okay, wow, that's very early.
So I think initially there was a lot of music at home, and you get these tiny violins. So for me, I think at that point of time, it was kind of more sitting with my dad and kind of imitating what he's doing.
Nice.
And then slowly teaching became a little more formal. And I think I started playing on stage on and off from the time I was 6, and probably professionally from when I was 13.
Wow. To start early, I think, is very important in many ways. But more important than starting early is to start.
Absolutely.
Because today I see a lot of my friends, when they look at, or somebody like a guitarist or a violinist, the first thing is like, wow, that's so cool. But little do they know about how much you had to go play the instrument, then actually turn yourself into a musician and understand the deeper root levels of that. So when do you consider in your entire violin journey, considering you started early, when do you think was like that moment where you said, hey, I've arrived?
I don't think I've had that moment yet, to be honest. But I think, I mean, to your point, that can happen both ways, in the sense that sometimes you look at an artist or at anybody, and you're like, okay, fine, you see their persona on stage, and you don't realize the work that's gone behind. Also, sometimes the opposite can happen, where you see somebody on stage and you get overwhelmed.
Correct. Like you get inspired by them. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's kind of happened. I've kind of seen both reactions after shows, whether it's kids or adults, or and like you're saying, I think the important thing is just to start without kind of having a huge goal in mind. I think having those long-term, short-term goals, all of that come later.
Yeah.
But I think the point is just to kind of start and start enjoying the journey.
Very true. I think there's a very interesting point that recently I read a book called The Atomic Habits. Not recently, I've read it a long time ago, in fact. One of the keys to having a successful habit, or to develop something into a habit, is to have small achievable goals. That means if you're picking up the instrument, I think in your language you're saying, don't go out there to try composing a tune in a month. That's not going to happen. Can you go there, put your 100% for that half an hour that you're picking up the violin, and do that consistently for a long period of time? That's it. Whether you compose, whether you're going to be the next big thing in orchestra, it doesn't matter, right?
Right. Yeah. And I think one thing that I've kind of learned to do over a period of time is to enjoy the struggle. Because I think sometimes you're very very focused on outcomes. I think as you grow older, that happens more and more. 'Cause you're like, okay, I'm putting in 5 minutes of effort now. What is this going to give me next week? So I think it really helps to kind of enjoy that struggle, a period of, especially if you're an instrumentalist, because I remember going through weeks and months of just like working on a small phrase, and then every day you don't see an improvement, you don't see an improvement, you don't see an improvement, and then suddenly you wake up and it's there.
There, yeah, yeah. So again, reminds me of so many things that people have done, right? Like the first 6 months you don't see it. It's like going to the gym and trying to measure how much you've lost weight, you know, every single day. But eventually if that compounds for like 8, 9, 10 months, then you see an automatic result there. Like, I think that's fantastic. And one more thing is I'm also going to have your sister on the show very soon.
Yes, yes.
So I think this is going to be a very interesting part. So tell me the role of your sister in your life, because she's also a musician, your parents who are also musicians. Can you tell me and the audience a little more into your family and how this whole thing has been going on?
Yeah, well, my parents are very accomplished musicians. My father is, in a very unbiased opinion, the violinist in India, Dr. Subramaniam. My mom is Kavita Krishnamurthy Subramaniam, who is an amazing singer as well. So I think a lot of that has kind of rubbed off on me in not only the music lessons, of course, which have been there at home, and you perform with them, you learn so many things, but you learn so many things off stage as well. You get an insight to how hard you kind of have to work, the effort that you have to put in for the little things.
Can I ask you, now you said your dad by far by name is one of the best violinists in India, and you are one too. Now you're on your own journey. How much of that was like a performance pressure, or how much of that was always running through your head, because you know that your role model, your idol is sitting at home and he's your dad, right? And that's the benchmark that people will measure you. Let's not take that away, because I've seen that so many places and not many people can keep up to that pressure. How have you dealt with it, and what is the reality of that pressure?
So for me, I think one benefit was I started early, and when you're a 6-year-old, 7-year-old going on stage, you're not thinking of anything.
Correct, makes sense.
And I'm glad that happened. So to some extent, I'm very glad that I had a lot of positive experiences on stage growing up. And I always say that that's very different from saying that I played very well, because you can play terribly and still have a positive experience. You can be fantastic and get ripped apart after, and then never want to go on stage again. So I think I had a lot of positive experiences. And to your point, this pressure of, okay, I want to be this, or this is my standard, I think all of that came later. And I always kind of, I still kind of hate seeing my dad sitting in the front row. And it not only freezes me, it freezes all the musicians around as well. But yeah, I think after a certain point, I realized that, obviously it's not a competition. It's not, okay, your father is there, you have to be there as well, or you need to be at least here, or any of those things. It's kind of respecting all the amazing things that my parents have done, and trying to find my own path along that way. So it's more about trying to be the best version of yourself, whatever that is. If that means going in this direction or going in another direction, that's fine, as long as you feel that you are kind of maximizing your potential, for want of a better word.
Nice. I think a lot of value was there in what you just said, because if you start replicating yourself based on whoever it is, be it your father, your mentor, your friend, then your why, the purpose of what you're doing is simply keeping them in mind.
Absolutely. And to that point, when I was growing up, I felt the biggest compliment somebody could give me after a show was, wow, you sound just like your father.
Wow.
You sound, and then for me, after a while, I stopped taking that as a huge compliment in the sense that, okay, if I'm sounding just like him, then I'm not doing anything new, or I'm not bringing in my own voice.
Brand identity.
Absolutely. So then later, the biggest compliment I thought I would receive was, wow, I could hear a very distinct voice. If I'm playing with my dad, then if I close my eyes, I know who's playing at each time.
Wow.
So that became my goal. Like, okay, if I know if I play well, if people say this, then I know that I've gone and done something that I'm proud of.
Superb. I think that's a very nice way to put it, because today so many people have different levels of measurement, and to really level up, you identify what works for you and then you go from there, right, in your own path, discovering new things. Now, speaking of discovering new things, in your road of discovery, now tell me, in what genre of music do you play the violin, or have you played with multiple kinds of artists? How does this whole thing work? I'm not a musician. I'm not the expert. I'll let you do the talking in this one.
So I learned Carnatic classical music, and for me that's still my base for everything that I do. I also learned Western classical violin, and I've always been interested in different styles of music. So I've been exposed to a lot of contemporary music, of course, jazz, traditional music from different parts of the world, and I think I've been lucky to collaborate with some absolutely phenomenal musicians, whether it's, say, a Hungarian violinist like Roby Lakatos, or an African singer from Senegal, and a koto player, and a kora player, and different people. There's also this incredible flamenco flute player recently that I've been working with, Jorge Pardo.
Can I ask you something? Why are you considering them as a very big moment, like a very big moment of collaboration in your journey? Like, why is that?
So I think for me, probably in the last 5-6 years, I've really been fascinated trying to understand different people's thought processes. And I think especially when you're in a creative field, and nothing is wrong, everything is right in a different point of view, you try to kind of figure out how people think and how. So I've always loved that, where I'm working with somebody who thinks in a completely different way and changes the way I think as well. So I feel like all these collaborations, sometimes I'll listen to somebody on the radio or on Spotify, or I have a lot of friends from around the world who I've kind of told, look, if you find somebody interesting, if you hear some music you like, please send it my way. So
Nice.
so that way I've kind of been lucky to have gotten a lot of different music that I may not have been exposed to otherwise. So for me, each time I kind of collaborate with these artists, it's a huge learning for me, and it's a lesson in kind of looking at one thing very differently.
Correct. I think I was getting to that because a very nice narrative. Now think about it. Music is something that opens your mind, exposes you to multiple things. Now it removes the resistance to change. Like, now you can absorb exactly from where this person is coming, because you've done your own, right? You feel you know your own instrument. He's doing the same instrument, but the thinking is a little different, but the resonance is very high. And I feel that's where music plays a big role of perspective, right? It gives you
Absolutely, yeah.
perspective to life and removes resistances in many ways. And I think one of the other things that remove resistances in life are also mentors. So tell me about a mentor or two who's played a significant role. Of course, I know your parents have been pillars, but who else? Is there anybody apart from your parents who's played a significant role?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, my parents have played a huge role, and I think I've talked about them a lot. But there's this Hungarian gypsy violinist, Roby Lakatos, who I really admire. And
Can I ask why?
so what he does with the violin is extremely unique, and I think there are millions of violinists out there, and I think my father is one of them, and he's another where he's so unique, and what he's done with the instrument is absolutely incredible. He's kind of made his own plucking technique, and I remember, I mean, me being a violinist, I heard a recording of his. I'm like, first time I'm like, how is he doing this? I need to find a video to see how this is even possible on the instrument. So I was totally blown away, and I was like, this sounds like there are at least 3 violins playing. And then when I saw the video, I'm like, okay, it's actually him, but this still, like, I'm seeing this, but something is wrong. So then I had a chance to meet him. We invited him for my grandfather's festival also that we do in India, and he came, and he was just the nicest guy. And one thing that I absolutely loved, so I was trying to not be too fanboyish, but then after like an hour or two, I went up to him and said, you know, I love your playing, etc., etc. And at some point, I want you to teach me how you do all these things, because I mean, as a musician, sometimes these are trade secrets, right?
Yeah, true.
So
true.
So he's just like, okay, come, bring your violin. Like,
now,
the first day that I met him, and he's like, okay, bring your violin. And then he showed it to me, and he said, okay, so you do this, you look at it like an 8, and then you're using 2 fingers, all of that. He showed me everything. And then I was just trying, very difficult. I was making a bunch of mistakes, everything. I was so blown away and motivated. So I practiced the whole night. The concert was the next day, and then between sound check, I went up to him and he's like, okay, is this right? And then, so then he's like, wow, you know, you really worked on it and everything. And then all of a sudden, after that first show, we had, I think, like 4 or 5 shows happening in India. Then I happened to go to Brussels. I had a tour 2 weeks from that day. So he's like, oh, you're coming to Brussels. I live there. I'm like, yeah, I know. So he's like, okay, would you be okay if I arranged a concert and we played together? It'll be fun to do something.
Oh my God, wow.
I was just like, and he had come to play with my dad, and stature-wise, he's right up there and all of that. And then he was just like, I'll put together a show. It'll be great to play with you in Brussels in 2 weeks. So that kind of blew my mind. And what really blew my mind was his simplicity. So I found out later, and looking at his life and all of that, he grew up as a street musician. And he was discovered by a great violinist, Yehudi Menuhin, when he was 17 or something. And he's kind of kept that same attitude to life. So I've gone and seen, like, after that I've played with him in these huge places. I've gone and seen him play in these huge venues on YouTube with like tens and thousands of people. And I've gone and seen him play in a room of this size with 50 people. And it's the same energy, it's the same. So it's like, today evening I want to play. So, and for me that was very freeing in mentally, because you're kind of taught as an artist, okay, fine, you need to progress into this. Okay, now now that if you're a better artist, now you don't do these things anymore, or you stop doing these things, or you need to look at your career like this, and you need to start thinking about. For him, it's just like, okay, it's time to play.
Play, that's it.
Yeah, and that's it.
The moments here I've arrived, and I think it's, you know, I was not anywhere related to art, but I think when I go on stage, right, there is a moment where you feel that you have arrived, right? And when you start operating from that moment, you see the walls, the people, and the energy gets so infectious that everything becomes one. Like it's in sync, right?
Right.
And I'm sure when you see an artist at that level, and you can now just sync, it's like a plug cord. You just see him and you're like, whew.
Yeah. And to that point, so I was again in Europe, and then all of a sudden I found out that he's performing somewhere close by with this incredible guitarist who is, and so this guitarist friend of mine, that guy was his idol, and
Okay.
so we were like, okay, let's just go. My sister was also there, and we all kind of went there. He had no idea we were coming. Suddenly he finds out, like, I meet him 15 minutes before the show. He quickly finds some Tanpura app from somewhere, and he plugs it in, and he announces in the first piece I'd like to do is a tribute to my friends from India, and he, like a completely spontaneous thing, and because that's how we felt in the moment,
Okay.
he puts a tambura on, and he kind of uses some Indian elements that he's kind of picked up listening
Okay.
to all these things, and that's his first piece.
Oh, wow. Wow, I think that's a artist, right? You could be like,
Yeah.
it's an element to be in. I mean,
So it's an amazing way to live life. I think.
true. So give me two takeaways in just two nuggets, like in two sentences. What would be your biggest two takeaways meeting this man?
So I think one is not to take yourself too seriously.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we all kind of at different points.
Yeah, true.
You get caught up in your own image
Yeah.
in some way, which can can be very bad in different aspects. And I think to kind of live life in the moment.
Yeah. I think I agree with you 100%, man. I think that's incredible, and I feel it too, because when you meet that right mentor, it's a feeling of home, right? Every time you see that man, you don't see him as a musician anymore. You see him as a human being. You see him at multiple layers, and I think that defines that person by multiple stages. Fantastic. So tell me, Ambi, as you progress in your career right now, what are some of the challenges that you have faced as a musician that you've overcome in very quickly, so that we can have the audience also resonate? If there's somebody who wants to pursue a music career, what do you think that you could give them as a golden nugget to avoid or do?
So one thing I feel that I kind of I have this issue in general that I like to plan very far ahead. So that's just me as a person, and I think the pandemic has not helped at all with that. But I think it is important to have these goals, but I think it's also important to kind of be flexible about the opportunities that present itself. I think as an artist, I think it's important to keep working on skill, and whatever skill that is. And I think one nice thing as an artist, if you're interested in this style of music, go for it. If you're interested in the piano, go for it. If you're interested in learning a little bit of jazz, go for it, because you don't know at what point they'll all kind of come together, and at that point you'll have skills that no one else has, because you are learning based on the kind of unique interests that you have. And I think so then suddenly when an opportunity presents itself, you need to be ready for that, because it's not a traditional career path where you know exactly where everything is headed. So in that sense, sometimes it's not very easy to kind of plan and say, okay, fine, if I do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, then step 5 is waiting for me there. So I think it's important to kind of keep working on things that interest you, and then be open to the opportunities that present itself.
True. And speaking of interest, one of the other things that you also told us that is you're an educator. So tell me, how did you get into this side of the spectrum in terms of music? What has been your journey like as a teacher? And tell me something about that.
So I always loved teaching. My grandfather was an amazing educator. My father also loves teaching, and so I started kind of teaching informally from the time I was 16. Then when we started SaPa, Subramaniam Academy of Performing Arts, the idea was to kind of make the next generation of musicians. So we were obviously very violin heavy in the beginning, and we started with 2 teachers and 3 students, and the idea was to kind of make a conservatory like you have these amazing music schools in Russia, in the US, in Europe. Um, so we started working along those lines. In 2014, we also realized that while it is important to work with the quote unquote top 1% of talent, music talent, it's also important to kind of work at the base of the pyramid and make sure that all children have access to quality music education. So when we talk about access, it's not only kind of financial and economic, which is very important, but also trying to make music education kind of fun and relevant for
People,
kids. Yeah.
And once it becomes incorporated into their life and system, it can, like I said, it can open doors, and like we spoke about resistance to change, it can really rewire your brain in multiple ways.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we've been working in a number of schools. We've kind of created our own curriculum. We work a lot. We train and work with a lot of teachers. So we have almost about 100 teachers now, and it's really nice because a lot of our music educators, of course, are kind of engineers, doctors, lawyers, all of that, who have kind of decided one day that okay, fine, I'm not interested in going back on the Infosys bus.
And this is it.
Yeah. So it's really fascinating because when those people are in classrooms, the passion level is just something else.
Wow.
And that's something that kids obviously will resonate with. When you have a teacher in front of you who, for the want of a better word, could be doing 100 other things, but chooses to be there because this is what gives them happiness. The kind of impact that you see is just something else. So now, I mean, we're working with 30,000 children. And I think that's still a very small part of what we want to do. So I think it's really nice that we're able to kind of, in our own small way, cause some impact both on the kind of kid side when they're learning music, and we're able to work with these amazing young musicians who are music educators, performers.
I think it builds a lot of perspective. I think as you see raw talent, different people having different styles, those potentials and everything, now that you're able to get the most out of your own potential and you're on that journey, you're able to put the same thing into somebody else and get what they're truly meant for. And I think that's a beautiful journey. I, for one, enjoy being a teacher too, and I think a lot of context that I bring into my podcast, or be it the book that I'm writing, which is going to be out soon, I think all of these things I'm able to share context as well. And I think that's the most beautiful part about being a teacher. It's the ability to give, not just receive.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a very spiritual experience as well. And thank you, Ambi, for coming on this show. And before I leave you, I have one last question. What's the next big thing? I know you're a planner now. You can't say I don't know. So what's the next big project, or what's the next big thing? Or if not, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
So actually, I've been working on a number of projects with symphony orchestras, and that's something that I'm really looking forward to writing for them as a composer and as an arranger. So that's something I'm really looking forward to. There's a project that's happening in July where I have to write for a 120 member ensemble. So that's something that should be a lot of fun. And I think on the violin side, for me, it's about kind of improving skill all the time and trying to make sure that I'm able to have new ideas. And I think it's important to kind of give yourself that headspace where you're able to do something new, because I think that's very important for me.
True. Thank you so much, Ambi, for coming here. And I'm sure these projects that you're working on will be amazing. And I am looking forward to experience your music. And